So, as you all probably know, Dragon Age the Veilguard released last week, and the reception to it has been, well, negative would be a nice way to put it. There's been criticism about the real-life politics impacting the storyline, gameplay issues, lack of enemy variety, basically a long list of cons. Most of these problems have already been covered by other YouTubers, but I want to dive into something a little different. In my last video, I talked about how the most disappointed fans were the core Dragon Age community, the ones who had loved the series for years. For them, the Veilguard feels like a completely different game. And that's not just a perception, it's reality. With this game, we saw a massive overhaul to the combat system, simplified party control, a lighter tone, less impactful decisions, and an art style that felt more animated than ever. The game now plays more like an action-focused linear adventure rather than the choice-driven RPG experience that Dragon Age fans had come to love. Fans of RPGs like The Witcher 3 and Baldur's Gate 3 often cite Dragon Age as another of their favourite series, and for many of them, Veilguard was a massive letdown. So it got me thinking, why do so many game studios end up disregarding their own core fan bases? Again and again, we see studios start small, building a unique type of game that attracts a passionate fan base. These fans support and promote the game, helping the studio grow and eventually succeed on a large scale. But often, when a studio reaches that big stage, their games start looking very different from the originals. They change up the gameplay, the tone, or the structure, leaving that original core audience feeling betrayed. But why does this happen so consistently? Why do so many studios move away from the very things that made them successful in the first place? In today's video, I'll explore a few examples, analyze some reasons for these changes, and then I'll share my own theories about why this pattern keeps repeating itself. Before we dive in, I just want to say thank you for everyone for supporting my channel. Today marks 7 months since I started this journey and I'm having a blast. If you're into video game discussions like this, please consider subscribing. But without further ado, let's get into it. So to understand this trend, let's start by looking at some specific examples of games that made these kinds of drastic changes over time. First up is Fallout. The original Fallout games, especially Fallout 1, were classic D&D inspired RPGs with a top-down perspective, turn-based combat, and heavy emphasis on player choice and freedom. The story was dark and gritty, with a world that felt harsh and unforgiving. Fans loved the strategic depth and the freedom, and these elements became the core identity of Fallout. Then Fallout 2 came out, which had a similar experience and kept that classic RPG feel. Fast forward to 2008 when Bethesda bought the rights to the franchise and released Fallout 3. This game was a massive shift from its predecessors. It reimagined Fallout as a first-person open-world experience. While this was a big change, Bethesda took care to maintain some of the original feel and mechanics, like incorporating the VAT system to simulate that turn-based aspect of the original games. Fallout 3 still had a grim tone and it allowed for some degree of role-playing choice. It scored a 93 on Metacritic, signaling that fans felt that it was a fair adaptation of the classic Fallout experience. The next release in the series was Fallout New Vegas, which was even more in tune with the role-playing depth that fans wanted, as Obsidian leaned into the elements that made the first game special. But then in 2015, we come to Fallout 4, which saw even more drastic changes. Bethesda moved toward a more action-oriented approach that felt more like a modern shooter, focusing less on story depth and player choice, and more on accessible, straightforward gameplay. Fallout 4 introduced a settlement building system that felt like a game within a game, a far cry from the decision-heavy RPG format of the originals. And by the time Fallout 76 came out, Fallout had become an online looter-shooter RPG, a huge leap from its roots. The transformation was complete, and the series was almost unrecognizable to its original fans. But it's not just Fallout. Final Fantasy, Assassin's Creed, Mass Effect, Dragon Age, you name it. Each series has gone through a similar shift over the years. Final Fantasy started out as a turn-based RPG, but in recent entries we see live combat taking over, and Assassin's Creed went from a stealth-focused historical adventure to an open-world RPG, where the assassin theme is all but gone. Fans complained that games like AC Valhalla bore no resemblance to the originals. BioWare's Mass Effect and Dragon Age series also became more action-focused, with less depth in story and choice. So why does this happen? Why do studios keep making these changes? Well, I think there are three main reasons: innovation, talent changes, and money. So let's start with innovation. As time goes by, we expect improvement in technology. Technology, and in particular video games, has seen such a leap in such a short time. 40 years ago, the best game was Pong. Now we can run games like Cyberpunk or Red Dead Redemption 2. That is such a huge improvement in terms of technology. We went from having text on the screen to read to now having actual actors motion captured and then placed into the game's world. To see this growth over time has been extraordinary. Games that once looked revolutionary now seem dated, and studios have to keep up with rising expectations in graphics, mechanics, and quality. Take Fallout 4's hotkey shortcuts and throwables as an example. These are modern improvements over Fallout 3, and few would argue against changes that make the gameplay smoother or even more accessible. But innovation sometimes comes at the expense of tradition, and in the process of trying to keep up with technological advancements, studios can end up sacrificing the core elements that define their older games. Fans don't want the next Fallout game to look like Fallout 2 in 2024, but they do want it to retain the spirit and depth of the original. So due to technological advancements, a lot of video game studios will make changes to their games in order to keep up with the times. But what ends up happening is a lot of games, when they put in these new features, end up sacrificing or removing a lot of the core features that made their game so special in the first place and made them so unique. This is the first reason why we see games change so much. Next, we have talent changes. Dragon Age Veilguard was heavily criticised for its poor writing, shallow characters, and lack of depth. Fans were quick to point out that many of the original writers who made Dragon Age Origins and Mass Effect what they were had since left BioWare. The same happened with Bethesda. Longtime fans noticed the difference in storytelling and depth between games like Morrowind and Fallout 4. When talented, visionary team members leave, the studios lose their unique perspective and skills, and new hires don't always share the same approach or the same level of talent. This change in personnel can dramatically affect the direction of the game. So although a game may come out and be the next in the installment, it can be from the same studio and it can wear the same logo, but it doesn't necessarily mean it is the same game. With a lot of the talent moving on, everything that made the game so special in the first place, if those people aren't there to remind others what it is that makes those games so unique and special, well then what ends up happening is when the game does come out, it's almost completely unrecognizable. But then we reach the final aspect: money. And I'm not just talking about the money that the game studios make, but the money that the studios need. You see, the cost to make a game back in the 2000s wasn't really a lot. In the 2010s, it was expensive, but you could raise the funds to do it. You didn't need a massive team. But nowadays, with expectations so high, everything has changed. It cost $200 million and 10 years to make Dragon Age's Veilguard. So where do you get that kind of money from and that much time to work on a project? You go to a publisher, and then the rules change. So what happens is, when a studio is growing, they attract a crowd who love their complex, in-depth role-playing games. Then over time, after receiving success, the studios grow. With this success comes higher expectations, and the cost of making games increases as well. So in order to fund the project, these studios have to turn to a publisher to fund the operation. Then the investors and publishers tell the studio to increase sales. And how do you do that? You make the game more user-friendly. To accommodate all types of intelligence, all ranges of age, maturity, you make it simple. And you copy what already works, what's already hot in the industry. So when they make games that appeal to the original fans, for example Fallout 1's D&D turn-based design, it wouldn't sell well. There are people who enjoy these complex strategy RPGs, but not enough to make the publisher money. Morrowind has no voice acting, it's strictly reading. It might be the best Bethesda game to date as far as story and writing goes, but a lot of people won't ever read it. They don't like reading. So if they release a game like Fallout 1, Dragon Age Origins, or Morrowind, it will make people like me happy, but it won't make them the millions that they want. See, Morrowind made $14 million since its release over 20 years ago. Skyrim, a more basic, user-friendly game, made over $173 million in less time. So it's less RPG, less complex, a lot of core aspects of Morrowind were stripped away, but it makes a lot more money as it can reach a broader audience. Fallout 4 introduced settlement building as well. Why? Well, Minecraft that same year made $350 million in just 1 year. So Minecraft is all about crafting, building, and being creative, and was one of the most popular games ever. Fallout 4 added its own settlement building. Did they go and try and get some of those fans over to the Fallout genre? Maybe. And then Fallout 76, all being online. Well, the Elder Scrolls Online has made over $2 billion since its launch. With its microtransactions, memberships, and repeat costs, it guarantees consistent income every month, as opposed to a single-player offline game which makes money from its customer usually only the one time. Dragon Age Veilguard has been compared to a mobile game. It's less RPG and more action. It has a lot of flashing icons, quick pace, non-stop action, and its graphics are a lot more animated. Graphics are compared to Fortnite, which made over $26 billion. Gameplay is compared to a mobile game, like Clash of Clans, which has over 150 million monthly players and has made over $10 billion. So, in an effort to chase the success of these other games, these studios are forced to change tactics by the publisher. BioWare made Anthem, and Bethesda made Fallout 76 and Elder Scrolls Online. Todd Howard, the CEO at Bethesda, said in an interview that he hadn't played Elder Scrolls Online as it wasn't his type of game. I'm assuming Fallout 76 is also not his type of game, as it's the same model, but it shows maybe they no longer have the final say. If the publisher says make it online, add in microtransactions, make it more cartoony like Fortnite, these studios often don't have a choice. The investors who ask for these things often don't know a single thing about what makes an RPG so special and unique, but they know what sells. So in an effort to cater to as many people as possible, these RPG games that we adored so much have changed so much over time, and with different art styles, simpler plot lines, different gameplay, it's clear a lot of these games are no longer the RPGs that we once loved. Chasing after the money, the games are so far removed from what they started out as that it's no longer even fair to compare them. RPG games are my favourite type of games. Kingdom Come Deliverance is a particular favourite of mine. It makes you sleep, you have to eat, it's difficult, you have to actually practice sword fighting. It is a true RPG through and through. Between this game and Call of Duty, which one do you think sold more and earned more profit? The answer is easy. So we may pine for the old Fallout or the Dragon Age games, and maybe the studios do want that as well, but when the publisher says you make it this way or you're fired, you have to do as you're told. Games like Minecraft and Fortnite generate billions, and they've influenced studios to make similar design choices for the promise of that kind of financial return. But when studios try to chase these trends, they often sacrifice the elements that made their games special to begin with. And after disappointing releases like Fallout 76 and now Dragon Age Veilguard, we're reminded that when you try to please everyone, you often end up pleasing no one. I also have to mention nostalgia is another factor. Sometimes our favourite games carry sentimental value, so no matter how good a new installment may be, it can never match the original in our hearts. For example, Resident Evil 4 is one of my favourite games of all time. The remake has better graphics, better gameplay, better voice acting. It is objectively the better game, but I still prefer the original, despite its limitations. I still prefer GTA San Andreas over GTA 5. Both the games that I prefer are objectively worse than the two others, but to me, I always think they're better because I played them when I was younger, and they left an impression. No matter how good a certain new installment of a game may be, it will never be a personal favourite in our life. But despite all this, there is still hope. New studios like CD Projekt Red, Larian Studios and Warhorse have emerged to create some of the best RPGs in history. Games like The Witcher 3, Cyberpunk, Baldur's Gate 3 and Kingdom Come Deliverance prove that there's still a demand for deep, complex RPGs that don't chase every trend. These studios put the quality of the game first and rarely rely on microtransactions or flashy gimmicks. And if these new developers keep putting out quality RPGs, they may one day fill the void left by studios that have since moved away from their roots. So while the gaming industry continues to evolve, there will always be studios dedicated to making games for fans like us. And as the success of games like Baldur's Gate 3 and Elden Ring shows, quality RPGs still have an audience. Let's hope that these studios keep focusing on making great games, because when they do, the awards and financial success usually follow. Anyway, that's it for this one, but what do you guys think? Can you think of any other games that have declined as a series over time, or can you think of one that continued to improve on time? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. If you enjoyed the video, please consider giving it a like, and if you're new here, please consider subscribing. I'm Av Gaming, where we do video game analysis, identifying what makes great games great and what could make good games great as well. Thanks for watching. Av out.